It is wonderful that FOSI has this tradition, and it's so great for Jay and I to be part of this tradition of presenting the research that we've conducted for FOSI among parents of kids who are connected and online. I'm going to take you through some of the key findings. I'm going to start. My colleague Jay is going to wrap us up. We covered a variety of topics in this research, and I think Stephen sort of gave you a hint of it and teased some of the findings. But we wanted to talk to parents about their views and their feelings about what their children are doing online, and that we see there are a lot of positives that they discern, as well as some concerns that they have. We also wanted to understand what are they doing to monitor and keep track of what their kids are doing, and some of the things that they themselves as parents are doing in terms of how they're modeling or not the kind of behavior that they're looking for from their children. So I'm going to take you through the findings here. We started with qualitative research, which this is the second year we've done focus groups with parents, and it's a really great way to hear in parents' own words how they're feeling about technology and the role it's playing in their kids' lives. And we really do hear sort of the push-pull of the excitement about all the opportunities and what it means for kids, but also some of the concerns parents have. So doing the focus groups is really informative, both in terms of helping us think about the questions for the survey, but to hear in parents' own words how they're feeling and how they're adjusting to what Stephen described as a rapidly changing environment as relates to the online activities of their kids. We followed that up with an online nationwide survey among 589 parents of children aged 6 to 17. Those were the same ages that we had in the focus groups. The focus groups were in September, the survey is in October, so these are quite fresh in terms of the results. And in each component, we were talking to parents who say their children are online and have some way of getting online at home. And just to start out and give you a sense of the accessibility that these kids have, these connected kids have to technology and various devices, we can see that the blue bars here reflect the proportion of parents who say, my child has this device of their own. Video game console comes in at the top with 70%, but 59% of parents age 6 to 17 who are connected say that their kids have a tablet or iPad, 55% a cell phone or some form of smartphone, 48% an MP3 player, and 48% a desktop or laptop computer. Additionally, parents will tell us that their kids have access to these even if it may not be the child's own device. What we see here is there's been a slight uptick in ownership among kids of smartphones, went from 47 to 51%, and tablets went from 51 to 58. So the mobile devices, and I think other research has shown that kids are engaging a lot in terms of using mobile devices, and we see that is increasing there. Interestingly, smartphone ownership among kids is higher the older the kids are, so teenage kids more likely to have them than kids who are 6 to 9, for instance. But when it comes to tablets or iPads, it's actually a little bit higher among younger kids than it is among the older teens. We also wanted to just understand, when did parents say that they allowed their children to have these devices? And what you see here is among parents who say their child has their own cell phone, and that's a feature phone, so not a smartphone, the average age that they got it was a little over 10, almost 11. 72% of parents said their child got one when they were age 12 or younger. Among those who say my child does not have a feature phone or a smartphone, the age at which they think they will let them get it is a little over 13, and only 6% say they wouldn't ever let them get it. Smartphone ownership is a little bit higher in terms of the average age. Among parents who say their child has one, the average age is almost 12, 11.9. 51% of parents said that their child had a smartphone by the age of 12, so at 12 or under. Among those parents whose kids don't have one, the average age is almost 14, that they expect that they would let them get it. But 15% of parents say, my child's never going to have a smartphone. Whether or not that changes probably depends to some degree on the persuasiveness of their children, but there are some parents who say that's not going to happen. And then in terms of having their own social networking account, among those parents who say their children have one, which is 57% of parents aged 6 to 17, The average age they say their child got it was 11, a little over 11. 55% of parents said their child had a social networking account by the age of 12, so before they turned age 13. Those who say their kids do not have one already, the age that they expect them to allow them to get it is 14, but 18% of parents say, my child is not going to have a social networking account. So there is some difference here in terms of those parents who haven't yet gotten on board. Some say that they don't think they will ever allow their kids to have it. But they are obviously the minority. So as Stephen said, we asked about a variety of things. We want to understand, where does technology fit in terms of parents' concerns, how they're navigating parenting today, where does it fall? And so we asked about a variety of things to understand the degree that parents say they worry a lot about this as regards their child. And what we found is that the things that they worry most about, not surprisingly really, are their kids' personal safety and then maintaining the privacy of their personal information. 75% say they worry at least a fair amount about their child's personal safety, but 67% about maintaining the privacy of their personal information. That obviously can relate to technology, as there's increasing ways for children to be giving out information and making information about themselves accessible. But it also has a lot of ways that don't relate necessarily to technology. And then sort of the next tier of concerns are their performance in school, social relationships, physical health. The majority of parents saying that they worry a lot or a fair amount about these things. When it comes to their technology use, 48% of parents say, I worry a lot or a fair amount about this regarding as regards my child. So that means 52% who are worrying less. Interestingly, there's not much difference by the age of the child, whether parents have a child who's under 10 or a tween or a teenager. But when it comes to the privacy of their personal information, increasing concern does increase as their children get older, with those who have teenagers the most worried, 72%, compared to 61% among younger kids. When it comes to technology use, interestingly, there's not a lot of difference by demographics or by the age of the children. What we do see, the one area is parents who are more educated, who have a college education or more, register a higher level of concern about their kids' technology use than parents who have less than a college education, by 54% to 44%. We asked parents, this here reflects an open-ended question that we asked in the survey, where we asked parents, how do you feel about the role that technology, including using electronic devices, using social media, and being online, plays in your child's life? This reflects a lot of what we heard in the focus groups, but what you see is that parents offer both positive and negative comments. The positive comments outweigh the negative comments by 46 to 33. There are a variety of positive comments and associations that parents make with their kids using technology, but the one that they mention most often is the role that it can play in their education and helping them with their school and schoolwork, 22%. And we did hear a lot about that in the focus groups as well, whether that's being able to hear another language without going to another country, whether that's able to just, you want to learn about a country, you can go online and explore, whether that is learning more about STEM or coding skills or other things. On the negative side, 33% offer some sort of negative comment, and these were all parents' just top-of-mind, open-ended responses. But 19% of those were in the category of they're just using it too much, and they should be doing other things. And that was a theme that we did hear in the focus groups, to the extent parents are worried. There was less concern, just top-of-mind mention about stranger danger or inappropriate content. And it was more about the time they were spending and how that relates to some of the things Stephen talked about, distraction and other things. The quotes at the bottom sort of get to that. Even when you tell them to go to bed, you see the lights of the device glowing in the room. That constant challenge parents talk about in managing the amount of time and when and where their kids are using devices. Or they just spend too much time doing things online that they could be doing for real outside. That said, there were a lot of positive comments in the focus groups about technology and their kids using it, particularly around, in addition to the role in education, around the ability to be creative and do things with technology, with their devices, using social media and others, that they couldn't do otherwise. And they were really they were excited about what they saw their kids doing, whether that was creating a video game, doing a claymation video, or other things that they saw as opportunities they didn't have when they were that age. So we wanted to understand on this next slide parents' views about the role of technology and the impact it has in a variety of ways and in a variety of areas of children's lives. And what really stands out most of all, there's actually two slides, this one and the next. We had a lot of items here, and there are a lot of areas where parents feel that technology and their kids' use of technology and social media and being online has a positive impact. That is they feel that most acutely when it comes to their child's technology skills and their ability to research and find information, 92% and 89% respectively. So those are areas where parents universally pretty much agree that that technology and their kids using technology is having a positive impact. But still you have 78% who think that their kids using technology is having a positive impact on their child's future, their career, and their life skills. Another 64% having a positive impact on their children's creativity. So a lot of areas here where the impact is seen as positive. These bars reflect the proportion who say that's having a positive impact. We also gave them the option of having a neutral, no impact, or a negative impact. None of these areas are many people saying that there's a negative impact. The negative numbers are really quite low in every area. Then there's a little bit of a drop when it comes to performance in school, communication skills, and social relationships with friends. But again, it's not that parents perceive a negative impact here. The majority are saying it's positive, and then some saying it's kind of neutral or no impact. But when we get to the next slide, we see that there is some differentiation that parents are doing in terms of how technology is affecting their children in different ways. And when it comes to some of the other aspects that relate to relationships and how their children relate to others and interact with others, there is a little bit, their parents are slightly less positive. Ability to make friends, relationships with older people and their grandparents, their relationship with me, their parent, their ability to interact and engage with other people. These are areas where, again, it's not that they're negative. In none of these areas, the only one, interact with people, 28% say negative impact, but 41% say positive, and then the rest are neutral. So again, these are not perceived as any areas where there's real negative impact, but they are differentiating here, and they do see great positives in some areas and are a little bit more moderately positive in others. Behavior of the child and their child's attention span are areas where parents are a little more mixed. But in both cases, the positive impact outweighs the negative impact. The only area where parents actually feel that the impact of their children using technology is more negative than positive is in their children's physical activity and fitness level. In that area, 44% say it has a negative impact, 27% positive impact, 29% no impact. So that is the only area where there is a net negative perceived by parents. So there's a lot of areas, as you can see, where they discern a real positive impact for their children in using technology. That said, we went back to the theme, and Stephen had been speaking about sort of the harms versus the benefits, and we wanted to understand how are parents looking at various devices and platforms, and how are they evaluating the benefits versus the harms. And what we can see here is that parents do make distinctions. And when it comes to a feature phone, by 43% to 19%, they think the benefits outweigh the harms rather than the harms outweighing the benefits. They're a little more divided, but still more likely to think the benefits outweigh the harms when it comes to smartphones, 37%, but 31% say the harms outweigh the benefits. And then you see kind of a flip here with the red bar going up a lot more when it comes to social media accounts. And in this case, parents are expressing more concern about harms. 47% think the harms outweigh the benefits. 26% think the benefits outweigh the harms. It's worth noting here, looking at the parents who say their kids have these things. So when it comes to a smartphone, if they say my child has a smartphone, 54% think the benefits outweigh the harms, 21% the harms outweigh the benefits. But if my child does not, it almost flips. 43% think the harms outweigh the benefits, and only 19% think the benefits outweigh the harms. We see that even more acutely when it comes to social media accounts. Those whose children do not have a social media account, 67% think the harms outweigh the benefits. 67% versus 14% who thinks the benefits outweigh the harms. And then parents who say my child has a social media account are actually fairly divided. 35% think the benefits outweigh the harms, and 32% think the harms outweigh the benefits. So there is some gradation here in the way parents are evaluating the impact of various technologies and platforms. And this shows you, obviously, as I just described, their children using these actually seems to have an impact in them feeling like there's more of a positive there. Whether that's they start to see what they're doing as they get onto these devices, there's probably also an element of parents being more familiar with them themselves. So we also looked at parents' confidence in managing their children's technology use. And today, 59% of parents say they're very or fairly confident in their ability to keep track of and manage their children's technology use. That is, they gave a rating of an 8, 9, or 10 on a scale from a 0 to 10. This is down a little bit from a year ago when we were here and presented the results, and 64% of parents were very or fairly confident. And we also see that the red part of the pie has increased a little bit. It went from 10 to 15%. That said, it's still only 15% that are really not very confident, and so the confidence level remains pretty high. We do see that it is highest among parents who have a high school education or less, parents who have younger children who are aged 6 to 9, and parents who are millennials. And part of that is because younger parents also tend to have the youngest children. So there is some element of that, as there may be also an element of play that younger parents are more comfortable themselves with these technologies. And then you can see in the box here, we just showed for you the subgroups of parents where there was the biggest change from this year to last year. And those who are college graduates, parents with a college education, saw the biggest drop in terms of their confidence level, down 12 points. And parents of girls aged 12 to 17, down 10 points. The parents' level of confidence relates a lot to how much they feel they know about what their children are doing when they use technology. And here we see 81% of parents say, I know most or a lot of what my child does when they're using electronic devices, using social media and online. So parents feel pretty well informed. Whether or not that is the case, we would need to do a survey among their kids to understand the degree to which they do know as much as they think they do. But they clearly feel quite informed. Those who were very confident in the last chart, 77% of them think that they know most of what their child does online. And then it drops pretty precipitously among those who say they're fairly or less confident. As you can see, knowing a lot about what their kids do really does change a lot with the age of the child. Parents who say they have a young child, age 6 to 9, 70% of them think they know most of what their child does. That goes to 44% if they have a tween, and to 34% if they have a child who's age 14 to 17. Tech-heavy parents, maybe not surprisingly, are most likely, among those most likely to feel that they know a lot about what their kids are doing. 63% of them know most, think they know most. I gotta remind myself to say that. Think they know most about what their children are doing. And so confidence and thinking that they know a lot obviously are closely related. We also asked about parents, asked them to report their own knowledge of what their kids are doing when they're using a variety of platforms. And the bars here reflect the proportion of parents who say they know a lot or most of what their kids are doing versus know some or less if they say that their child does this. So among parents who say my child posts videos to YouTube, 81% of them think they know a lot or most what their children are doing when they do that. Among those who say my kids play video games online, 79% say I know most or a lot of what they're doing, and 76% know most or a lot when their kids are using social networking sites, specifically mentioning Facebook. There is a sort of a drop between those who say their kids use Facebook and parents feeling that they know what their kids are doing, versus at the bottom, parents who say their kids use social networking sites like Twitter or Snapchat. It's still a majority, but 60% say I know a lot or most of what my kids are doing. So there is a bit of a gap there in terms of social media and parents feeling more confident or more like they know what's going on and what their kids are doing on Facebook than on some of the other social media that their children may be using. That may be also partly because parents are more likely to be on Facebook than on some of the other social media. I'm going to turn it over to Jay now, who's going to get into some of the additional findings we had, and afterwards we will have an opportunity for some questions.
Thank you, Abigail. So, as Abigail tells us, parents think they know a lot. Not only that, they feel like they know more than their kids. When some of those high school kids come to the conference later, you can ask them directly if, in fact, their parents know more than them about technology. But we found that 65% of parents say that they know more than their kids about online activities. Just 20% say that their own kids know more. Even among parents of teenagers, they're more likely to say that they know more than their kids do about the use of technology. So we have the picture of the smarty pants mother there with her college gown on, her graduation gown, how smart she is about technology. But then when we go a little bit further, when we say, hey, have you actually ever learned anything from your kids about how to use features on, say, your smartphone or tablet? Actually, a majority say, yeah, I've learned something from my kids on that. Online social networks and texting, almost 40% say that they have learned something from their kids about those technologies. And in fact, among those parents of teens, even 60% about 60% in all of these categories say that they've learned something from their teens about how these various technologies work. So maybe parents aren't quite as smart as they think they are, and maybe in fact don't know quite as much as they think they do about technology or what their kids are doing. Having said that, perhaps due to their higher level of confidence, 2 out of 3 parents actually say that they do not use parental control technologies to limit or monitor their children's internet use. Only 36% say that they have done so. Now, what's interesting about that is how it intersects with parents' confidence, as Abigail talked about, in managing their kids' technology use. The more confident a parent is, the more likely they are to have used a parental control tool or function. Among very confident parents, it's 40%. It's 38% among those who are fairly confident. Drops all the way down to 26% among parents who have a lower level of confidence. This is not proof per se that parental controls by themselves increase parents' confidence, but there's clearly a relationship there that's interesting and sort of worth noting. Now, we asked those 2 and 3 parents who don't use parental controls simply why not, and the overarching reason they give is they really don't think that they need them. In fact, the top 2 answers they gave at around 40% each were, I trust my child. I trust that he or she will be safe online and will act appropriately. Just as many said that I have house rules and limits in place that negate the need for parental controls. In and of itself is interesting. However, again, we sort of limit it, if we limit it to those parents who are have a low level of confidence, who are not quite as confident in their ability to manage their children's technology use, the picture changes ever so slightly. They do, a third of them still say that they trust their child and therefore don't need the parental controls, but they're just as likely to say that they really just don't know how to use them. And they're more than twice as likely as parents overall, or twice as likely as parents overall, to say that their kids are just going to get around whatever technology that or barrier they put up in place. Again, sort of reflecting that there are certainly kids who know more than their parents, or at least the parents think they do. So there's clearly still some room for parental education around the idea of parental controls and how they can be used, particularly in helping them understand how to use them. So, but even if only a third, just over a third, use parental controls, most parents have taken some type or another of hard step to make sure that they can monitor or limit their children's technology use. 62% have taken the dreaded step of forcing their child to friend them on social media. 46% have disabled purchasing ability on their child's smartphone or tablet. 40% have taken Stephen Balkin's recommendation and turned off their child's location function on their smartphone or tablet. And about the same number have turned off the data on their child's smartphone. So clearly parents are not helpless here. And of course there are those rules that parents talked about that they have a great deal of trust and faith in. a large majority have some type of rules in place. In fact, 87% say that they do at least one of these things that you see up on the slide here, and most of them do multiple, including limiting what websites their child can access, what kind of online accounts they're allowed to have, among the most popular. And again, these are house rules that don't necessarily have a backup by the technology that parental controls provide, but at the same time, parents clearly have a lot of faith in the rules they have laid down and that their children can and will follow those rules. More specifically, 3 out of 4 parents have actually are backing up those rules with some kind of action, which is sort of grounding for the modern age, and saying that they have used as a consequence or a punishment for poor behavior, taking away technology. 75% have done this. It's higher for parents of younger children. It's closer to 80% or even above. But even 60% of parents of teens have confiscated technology or limited its use as a result of children's poor behavior. Now, so the question is, what have children done to bring upon themselves this draconian kind of step of limiting technology? The most popular thing that they have done, or the most often thing they've done, is just sort of broken a house rule of one type or another. And another is spending too much time online or too much time with devices. And this really was a discussion point, as Abigail said, in our focus groups. Among all the concerns parents have about technology, the amount of time that kids spend staring at screens really does bother them. And they have set up rules to limit it. If kids break those rules, away go the cell phones and tablets. So parents are at least claiming that they are laying down the law here and making their kids sort of follow the rules with technology as the bait or the stick or the carrot, as the case may be. Now, most parents feel that they themselves do a pretty good job when it comes to setting a good example for their kids in terms of their technology use. We had them do a little report card for themselves and ask them to grade how good an example they set for their kids. The majority give themselves the gentleman's or gentle ladies' B, but almost 40% give themselves an A and pat themselves on the back pretty heartily. Nobody gives themselves below a C, and that C is not a particularly popular grade, only 9%. The overall GPA, if you will, is a 3.3, which is, again, that gentleman's B, which I don't know about you, I'm very familiar with from my college days. And nobody's busting the curve. That 3.3 GPA is actually quite even, depending on both among mothers and fathers, among parents of different ages, among parents with kids of different ages, among different education levels, and parents of all races. They all feel that they're doing a, by and large, not perfect, but pretty good job. But they do admit to having a few missteps now and again. The ones on the left they may not characterize as missteps, but 19% say that they've posted or shared something online that maybe in the future their kid will find embarrassing, something about their child. Another 10% say that their children have actually asked them to take something down that was embarrassing about them. And 7% say they've posted or shared something negative or critical about their child, maybe when their child broke some of those rules that elicited the technology being taken away. But even in the focus groups, we did a similar exercise and asked parents to grade themselves, and the grades were largely the same. But they did sort of talk about some of the things that were clear missteps. Like one father talked about how he rails against Facebook and his kids' use on it, and then his kids catch him flipping through his Facebook page all the time. A couple talk about how they are not allowing their kids to text while drive, and one even says he made his kids sign the pledge not to do so, but then his kids catch him at the red light doing what we all do, which is flipping through our email or texting at the red light, and they yell at him to, "Dad, put the phone down." So clearly the house rules go both ways, which is good, but parents, while confident, are certainly far from perfect. Now, I want to end on a point that I think is particularly pertinent here at the Conference for the Family Online Safety Institute, and that is that for a lot of parents, the majority, in fact, that technology time is, in fact, family time. 55% say that they spend at least fairly often, or even very often, online with their kids going to websites or playing video games or checking out social media sites, that it's a family exercise that they do together. It's more often happens for parents of younger children, which isn't surprising, but even 44% of parents of teens say that they do this with their teenager. And of course, those tech-heavy parents that Abigail mentioned before are the most likely to do it. This is moderately interesting on its own, but where it becomes particularly interesting is when you look at how those parents who do spend time with their kids online compare to those who don't on a host of other attitudes. We actually pulled parents of teens out for this point, just so since they tend to give their teens more autonomy with technology anyway, and just looked at parents of kids ages 6 to 13. Those parents who often look at technology or participate in technology with their kids have a higher level of confidence in their ability to monitor their kids' activity, are more likely to say that they know what their kids are doing, again, or to think that they know what their kids are doing when their kids go online. And those technologies that parents overall were slightly less facile with, Snapchat and texting apps, those parents who spend time on technology with their kids are substantially more likely to say that they know a lot about those. So on the whole, it seems that there's, again, a clear relationship here between spending time with your kids online and being more comfortable and facile with monitoring and managing your kids' online progress. This is not to say that those parents who spend the time online worry less about technology. They still worry, in fact, in slightly higher numbers than those who don't. But at the same time, it's a general comfort level and a confidence level that's much higher, and we think is a really good endorsement of the idea that technology is something that families can do together, that more families can and should do together, and that's going to sort of make this difficult, increasingly complicated media environment that Stephen talked about something that parents can navigate more easily and more confidently going forward. Thank you very much.